If there was a book that could gaslight me, it would be this book. Today I'm going to be talking about the worst books that I read this year. And when I say that, I don't mean that these were objectively the worst books that were published in 2020. I just mean that these were books that I happened to have picked up this year and they didn't turn out that good in my opinion. I don't really mind whenever I pick up a book that turns out to be bad though, because I don't feel like I'm wasting anything. Like, it's not wasted time because it's still reading and I enjoy reading, and it's not wasted money because, as most of you know, I get all my books from the library. Even though libraries are closed this year because of quarantine, I've been getting all of my books from Libby, which is a sponsor of this video. Libby is a free reading app created by Overdrive that lets you borrow ebooks and audiobooks from your library as long as you connect it to your phone, your laptop, your computer, whatever. All you really need is your library card. You punch in the numbers and it automatically connects it through the app. I literally use this app every single day. Most libraries will let you get a library card online now, and if you don't have one, there's a large number of library cards that would actually give you a digital card using just your phone number. Even if you don't have a library card currently, you can still sample the books to see if you're into them or not. And if you're like me and you have multiple cards at libraries, you can get the hookup at every single library that you have a card for on one app. About 90% of libraries use Libby for their ebooks and audiobooks, and Libby is also available in 78 countries worldwide. It works basically like a physical library. You just borrow an available book and then it automatically gets returned in 2 to 3 weeks unless you renew them. It's completely free, but if you want to support Libby anyway, because they're an amazing app, they have a shop where you can buy like sweaters, hoodies, masks, t-shirts, and 100% of their proceeds go to library charities. It works 24/7, and as long as you have a library card, you can use it anywhere in the world. I cannot recommend this app anymore for saving me during this pandemic. So huge thank you to Libby for sponsoring this video and for just being the app that I use every single day, every single waking day, because I cannot be alone with my thoughts. So I always have to have an audiobook turned up. Okay, now let's talk about the 5 worst books I read this year. I decided to rank them from 1 being like the worst book ever to number 5, which like is bad, but like not as bad. Like, I would still read the sequel to it. So for number 5, at the bottom of the list, we are gonna go with Serpent and Dove. This is a young adult fantasy book that is primarily focused on romance. It got a lot of buzz when it first came out, and I noticed that people either loved it or hated it. And that made me super curious whenever I see totally different perceptions of the book, because I wanna know what side I will fall on. So this takes place in France, and it follows the main character, who is a witch who has fled from her coven and is now hiding in a city. She has forsaken all of her magic, and now she has just resorted to stealing. It's dangerous to use her magic because in this city, witches like her are being hunted. So if they find out that she's a witch, she's gonna get burnt like a hot Cheeto. So no more magic for her. Plus, she can't even disguise her magic because every time a witch uses magic, they emanate a smell, which I think is different for each witch. But what I found super funny was that throughout the entire book, every time she had to use magic, the characters around her, including her love interest, was like, oh, what's that smell? But the thought that the smell could be coming from the girl standing right next to him never crosses his mind, ever. Speaking of love interest, he is a chasseur, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not quite sure. That's basically code word for him being super loyal to the church, kind of being like a soldier to the church, but he's also like a virgin. He's a witch hunter, not a pussy hunter, is basically what I'm saying. The way that the plot is set up is that these two characters who are on opposing sides and hate each other are forced to marry. I was intrigued when I first picked up this book because I was just interested in finding out, how can two people who have totally opposite values and are taught and raised to hate each other, how are they going to intersect and learn from one another and fall in love? And also, how are they forced into a marriage in the first place? I really wanted to see what would happen. And then it happened. And I was like, oh. So we're going down this route. Basically, the dude doesn't know that she's a witch. He just knows that she's a thief because he caught her in the beginning of the book when she was disguised as a man. And by that, I mean she was just wearing like a fake mustache. Because obviously, you know, those are like the two genders, mustache and no mustache. Later on, when he's in a theater, he sees her again. And so he tries to capture her. But the thing is, when he sees her again, some shit went down, like in a prior scene where she got beaten the shit out of by like the other witches. So her face is really bruised. And so while he's trying to capture her, they end up falling on the stage in the middle of the public eye. Everyone is aghast because he's on top of her, and now it looks like he was this Chaucer dude, holy virgin, I don't know, beating the shit out of this random girl. He's like, oh my god, like what do I do? Because my reputation as a Chaucer who upholds all of these virtues is being ruined because people think that I beat up women. And obviously in the year 2020, that's the worst thing a man can be. Like, yeah, women do get beaten up every day, but you know what's worse? When a man gets accused of being that. So obviously he's in a little pickle, and there's this dude there, I forgot what his role was, but he was like the priest or like the head of the church or something like that. He's there and he's like, okay, I got a solution. What we're gonna do to clear up this misunderstanding is we're gonna have you two marry each other. And the reason for why that works is because if they were married, then it would make more sense for him to beat the shit out of her because she wasn't being an obedient wife. That way the crowd can be like, oh my god, he's a lady beater. Oh wait, he's just a wife beater? All right, carry on then. This was the part where it really went all downhill for me. I get that people didn't care about women being in shitty marriages, and they probably wouldn't care if women were beaten by their husbands because they considered women to be property by their husbands. But there really was no other way. There really was no other solution to clear up this misunderstanding. Okay, there's so much more that happens in the book, but if I go on and on about it, this video will be way too long. So I actually have a separate video where I talk in detail about things that happen in the book, because a lot happens. A lot happens. She propositions a minor. She's able to break free from imprisonment by singing a song called Big Titty Liddy. I swear to God, I'm not making this shit up. Big Titty Liddy is like this song that is so monumental to this story, all the way to the very climax, like the most action, high, intense scene of the book gets sidetracked by the Big Titty Liddy song. And it was at that point where I was like, I can't rate this book any higher than 2 stars. I'm sorry. It's just not. But I'm still ranking it as number 5 in this list because even though I found the whole story to be totally absurd and ridiculous, I still want to give props to the author. I was reminded a lot of Sarah J. Maas while I was reading this book because the writing style and some of the way that the plot is fabricated a little bit reminds me of Sarah J. Maas. And I didn't realize until halfway through the book that Sarah is actually this author's favorite author. And A Court of Mist and Fury is this author's favorite book. And then when I found that out, after being in dismay, there was also some part of me that kind of felt proud of this author because I was able to make the connection of this book to the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which regardless of my feelings for that book series, is something that this author really loves. So I think that's kind of like an amazing accomplishment. So I actually feel like in a way, she did a great job in that aspect. The kind of people who love A Court of Thorns and Roses would love Serpent and Dove. That's the kind of audience and demographic that she wants to go for, and I think she has succeeded in that. So was the book ridiculous? Yes. But I still want to give props to her for that because it's like, own your truth, you know? I think this is a debut novel and she already hit the mark right. Good for her. Get your coin and keep on singing Big Titty Liddy. I may not have rated your book highly, but I support you regardless. At number 4, I am going to put The Couple Next Door, which is a domestic thriller about a couple who went over to their neighbor's house and they left their baby at home because they were like, well, I mean, we're just right next door. We have a baby monitor, so if anything happens, we can just pop on by to make sure that the baby is okay. Except after their dinner party is over and they go back home, their baby is gone. And they're like, oh my God, my baby, what happened to my baby? Who could have known that leaving a baby alone for several hours unsupervised would result into this? Who would have thought? It's very similar to this true story that happened to a child that I think was named Madeline. So I guess the author took that story as inspiration for the setup of the plot, but the rest of the story and the execution just really fell flat for me. The truth of what happens is much more complicated. Hopefully not as complicated as the actual story, because the truth is actually very stupid and I can't really elaborate further on that without spoilers. There's a detective that has to figure out what is going on, and everyone involved is suspicious. The neighbors are suspicious. They're very sketch. The neighbors are basically this one lady whose only personality trait is being a slut, and then the other guy is like her husband, but he's just there, so I'm guessing he's just like a cuck. What I've noticed in thriller books is that every time there's a character who acts like a skank, she's automatically very suspicious because, you know, we can't be trusting these hoes out here. But I would argue that the main couple is even more annoying because the mom is just hysterically crying the whole time and does nothing to contribute to the actual story. Like, what was her role in the story besides giving birth to this child who's now missing? She didn't do anything. And the dad is literally the stupidest human being alive. His logic was non-existent. That part in his brain, whatever part that focuses on like the logic and reasoning and common sense, it does not fucking exist. And then the detectives themselves are also very aggressive to the point where I was like, yo, this is unprofessional. Like right away, they barge in and they're like, you did it, didn't you? Hey, we know that your child is missing and we're supposed to help you find your baby, but we're gonna go ahead and straight up accuse you of having something to do with it. And it's like, dude, regardless of whether you think this couple actually did it or not, why are you going all out, guns blazing, accusing them of something? And obviously that's gonna make them shut down and not try to give you any more info. Like, damn, for detectives, you can't just be subtle about this. Plus, the writing often relied on one of my pet peeves, which is telling instead of showing. It would straight up tell you what the characters' motivations were and what their personality traits were without actually describing it for you to figure it out on your own. And I feel like that's even more important to make sure not to do in the thriller, because the whole point of reading a thriller or a mystery or a suspenseful story is to guess what the motivations of the characters could be. So if you just straight up say what the motivations are, like, why am I even reading this book then? Now I'm just reading about a bunch of idiots who couldn't take care of a baby. Basically, The Couple Next Door made it on my top worst books of the year because all the characters were just stupid. I'm convinced that the most intelligent character of this whole story was the baby herself. For number 3, I'm gonna put Nevernight, which is an adult fantasy book that was so edgy, it nearly even cut me. From the moment that you read it, you feel like you're in a My Chemical Romance music video. The story follows a 16-year-old girl who joins a school of assassins so that she can seek vengeance on her family. This 16-year-old girl is the baddest bitch to rule the world. She's not like other 16-year-old girls. She has flat titties. She has uneven bangs that she cuts herself. She kills people and she doesn't care about it. And she's described as ugly because she has sharp, prominent cheekbones from being skinny, I guess. What I found the most absurd about this book was that she joins the School of Assassins, and part of the lessons that she has to learn on how to be the next best assassin is to be super sexy, because sexiness is power, I guess. Like, her teacher, who basically is the instructor for Sexiness 101, has this whole monologue about why being sexy is useful to your advantage. And it's just this typical femme fatale bullshit that a lot of male writers rely on, because then it's like, ooh, now we can make sure that the female character is sexy so that the guys could be into it, but the girls can still think that this is somehow feminism. What the teacher does is give the main character, a 16-year-old girl, a boob job and plastic surgery to rearrange her face because she's too pale, her cheekbones are too prominent. You know, it's just really hard to be a skinny girl. So she gets a boob job in order to help her be a better assassin, I guess. But if you were gonna be an assassin, wouldn't it be better for you to have flat titties? Because aren't assassins supposed to be like behind the scenes, not noticeable to other people? Assassins are supposed to be in the shadows, right? Like, you're not supposed to remember them as this sexy big titty lady girl. They have to be good at sleuthing and sneaking around. So how are they gonna sneak around if their big titties are getting in the way from them crawling through events? Or I don't know. I don't know what assassins do. Clearly I didn't learn enough from that assassin school, but that was just one of the most ridiculous things I read. I didn't an entire video about this book because there were just so many lines where I was like, what the fuck am I reading? Like literally, what the fuck am I reading right now? I can understand the appeal for why people might like this book because you can tell that the author has a lot of fun writing it. Like you can tell he really loves to write. Like he really loves it. Like he loves his own writing. He'll go on and on and on about it in several page-long monologues. And you're like, please stop, no more monologues. But he doesn't care. He's gonna keep on doing it. I could not get into it. It was too edgy for me. Maybe I'm too vanilla, but I can't deal with a 16-year-old girl trying to be assassins with all these other prepubescent bitches out here. Just to give you an idea of how edgy it is, there is this one comparison about how her beauty is like the beauty of a fresh suicide. Like, what the fuck is that even supposed to mean? It's like the author just picked the edgiest thing he could think of so that he could compare it to something that's not even related to it. So much of the writing is purple prose that should have been cut out, but it didn't. It's like the author binge-watched Monty Python, took Adderall, and then wrote this whole novel as a stream of consciousness in one sitting. At number 2, I have placed True Colors by Kristin Hannah for that spot. Ironically, I have her other book, The Nightingale, as one of the best books I read in the year of 2020. So I really admire how flexible the author is with creating such a wide range of stories that she was able to make it on both of my lists. She wrote this book a long time ago though, and I think you can kind of tell because a lot of the stuff that was written in True Colors was not that PC. I don't know how to describe this book other than horse girl soap opera, which is a sprinkle of problematic depictions of indigenous characters, just for a little bit of flavor. The story follows 3 sisters, but in a way, it basically only follows 2 sisters because the middle child is just there, like in the background, forgotten about, which you could argue is accurate portrayals of what middle children are like. The oldest sister is described as an overweight bookworm, literally described that in the synopsis. She's a lawyer and she's super successful in her career, but that doesn't really matter because she is single and alone and she is so old but she's not married. She is very jealous of the youngest sister who is her father's favorite. She is so beautiful. All the boys want her. She is just the gem of the family. The older sister gets even more jealous when one day this guy that she has had a crush on since they were little falls for the younger sister. And he asks to date her. And because the younger sister is the kind of girl that kind of just like goes with the flow and doesn't know what she really wants, she's just like, I mean, I guess. And the older sister is like, how dare she take my man, who isn't actually my man, but I kind of had dibs on him anyway. I mean, I didn't tell anyone I had dibs, but she should have been a mind reader. Throughout the book, the middle sister keeps on telling her, hey, why don't you just tell her how you really feel about this guy? Because if you just communicate your issues, then the younger sister would have never wanted to hurt you in the first place. And then the older sister's like, shut up, you're a middle child. Nobody listens to you or cares about you. And then the middle sister's like, all right, good talk, peace out. And then she fades away to the background. It escalates to the point where the guy ends up proposing to the younger sister. And again, the younger sister's just like, I mean, all right, I guess. So she accepts the proposal. They get engaged. The older sister is seething. And then to add more drama, their father ends up hiring a new man to work at their horse ranch. He is an indigenous man with a very secretive history. He doesn't like to talk about his past, but he's kind of like the bad boy. There's like rumors about him being violent and having like a criminal record. And he ends up seducing the younger sister, even though he knows that she's engaged. Because he's just like, I know you're not actually interested in that dude, so how about you go bang me? And she's just like, all right. So they end up having an affair and the older sister finds out about it and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe I can now use this tea to fuel my vindication against my own flesh and blood over a man who doesn't even give a shit about me. I have barely scratched the surface of what happens in this story, but that's basically just the beginning. There are a few reasons why this book is on my worst books of 2020 list. The first is that the sisters, all of them, were such caricatures. This is actually an issue that I noticed in Kristin Hannah's other book, The Nightingale, but it was less of an issue in that other book because at least in that one, the other sisters, you can kind of believe cared about each other and weren't so bitchy towards one another. Whereas in True Colors, the older sister was so fucking awful to the younger one when she didn't even communicate her issues with her in the first place. Like, okay, so you just hate her because she's pretty, because she's with a guy that you had a crush on, but you didn't even tell her that you had a crush on him. And the older sister constantly talks about how fat she is and how bad she feels about how fat she is. A lot of women deal with body image issues, so it is kind of realistic for her to talk very poorly about her body, but it felt very weird for me to read that constant belittling of her own body and negative self-talk when Kristen Hanna herself is a skinny blonde lady. Like, she looks more like the younger sister, but the older sister constantly thinks of herself as ugly and fat and unlovable. It would be one thing if she thought that in the beginning, but then there was character development and she learns to love herself in the end. But that didn't happen. Even till the very end of the book, she still constantly sought male validation. I hated how passive aggressive and jealous and vindictive she was towards her younger sister. And I don't think that should be equated to being fat. Like, just because you're fat doesn't mean you're jealous of every skinny bitch out there. You can be a fat girl and still be a good fucking person. And the indigenous character in the book, I did like reading about compared to the other characters, but I didn't like how he was portrayed as like this dangerous and seductive man that literally will steal your white women away. Like, he's definitely sympathetic throughout the story, and I did care about him. I wanted the best for him, but there's just something weird about the only person of color in this entire story is a dude who is seen as like a bad boy and dangerous and has a violent criminal past and will steal your beautiful white women away from her husband. Just doesn't sit right with me. There's just like way too many implications that I don't feel comfortable with, especially considering Kristen Hanna is a white author. And what was this book even supposed to be about? Like sisterhood? Because if so, that was a really shitty portrayal of sisterhood. My only hope is that the indigenous character gets the fuck out of that family. And then the last book that I am saving for the number one spot is The Wives by Tarryn Fisher. You have probably already seen my full video commentary about this book. And I remember when I was putting together that video, I had to open a Google Doc and literally write down every single thing that happens in the book and look up quotes and take screenshots, because I knew if I just recited it from memory, people would not believe me that this actually happened. I needed screenshots of actual quotes of the writing to show that yes, the author literally wrote this line, and yes, this literally happened. To refresh your memory, The Wives is about a main character named Thursday who is married to a husband who has two other wives. She's never met them and she doesn't know anything about them. The only thing that she does know is that he visits them on specific days of the week. He has this schedule arranged where he divides his time between the three wives because all three of them live separately from each other. So the other wives are called Monday and Wednesday. She doesn't know what their actual names are. She just calls them by that because that's when he visits those two women. It's a very unusual arrangement, but the main character agrees to it anyway because she's just so crazy about him. He's such a good catch. Why, you ask? I don't fucking know. There was literally nothing good about him. But then the main character can no longer stand it anymore, and she needs to find out the truth about the other wives and who they are and what's going on. And while she tries to find out who the other wives are, she begins to uncover secrets that her husband is possibly hiding. I picked up this book because I felt like the premise was actually interesting. I wanted to know more about this weird arrangement that they had and how she ended up there and what kind of secrets that the husband was hiding. Because let's be real, the husband is definitely hiding something that's shady as hell. In the beginning of the book, there are so many lines that I was making fun of in my full video review, where the lines were saying something about how she had no other hobby other than just being a wife to him. And she spent all this time arranging the table to make sure that it was the best one suited for his needs. And she got like a flower arrangement that looks like a clitoris just so that it could entice him to bang her. Literally, that's how the writing was like. But I didn't even mind that at first. It was there for a reason, right? I was like, okay, maybe this is like a commentary for how smitten she is with this dude and how brainwashed she is by this man. Because as much as I make fun of him for being this basic bitch who somehow nabs several women, a lot of men are like that in real life. There's so many women who join cults from a dude who's so fucking ugly, but apparently he's charismatic or whatever. There are men who exist who have multiple wives who are super loyal to him, even though he ain't shit. I felt like this could have been really good commentary for the kind of gender dynamics that come with that. Why is it that it's always one husband and multiple wives? Throughout the book, the main character is always shit talking about the other wives and comparing herself to them and judging them for their own decisions. Like, one of the other wives is a career woman, and she judges her for prioritizing her career over bringing kids to the husband. Again, I didn't quite have a problem with that in the beginning because I was like, this could be commentary, because in these types of dynamics, women are being pitted against each other and are judging each other when really the common enemy is the man who is manipulating them and taking advantage of them. I can't really say how it actually went without spoiling it, but if you want to know all the crazy shit that happens, you can click on the video that I made about it. What actually happens is such a heavy-handed and cheap plot twist, and the most like unoriginal plot twist you could ever make. This author could have literally written anything else and it would have been better than what actually happens in the book. What I found so stupid was that the book, I think, prides itself in being a story that has a lot of twists and turns. Like, you think one thing, but then another thing happens and you're shocked by that. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good book, because if one thing happens and then the author's like, just kidding, this happened, but then the author's like, just kidding, that didn't happen, this thing happened, and you keep on going back and forth and you don't know what actually happened and what's real, that's not a good story. That's just you being the most unreliable writer of all time. It was just so convoluted and so melodramatic. Reading the entire book felt like a fever dream. If there was a book that could gaslight me, it would be this book. And so ends my top 5 list of worst books that I have read in 2020. What a messy year for messy books. Unsubscribe from my channel, and goodbye.
Good day dreaming, I just want the feeling of you in my bed. I'm down to just waste time right below your waistline. Want you by my head.